Action. We are live. Thank you for everyone joining. It's good seeing everyone out there. I also saw on LinkedIn there were a bunch of people who are probably following live there and on YouTube. So thanks for joining. Today's gonna be a little different. Devin's actually gonna interview me, and this was his suggestion. So if anything goes wrong, we could blame Devin. No, jokes aside, I think it's gonna be a cool topic. I write a lot. Once a week, I write a blog. Now my newsletter's every other week. Um, I don't know. I like what I write, so I don't know if other people do. But things have been
I
pretty
do.
good on the blog. Yeah, thanks, Devin. Month over month, more reads, more views on each of just as a whole on the blog. So if you haven't, definitely check it out. You can go to my LinkedIn. It's under one of those sections of posts that I've starred. So anyway, I think we're going to talk about some blogs that I recently wrote. One actually I thought was pretty cool: quirky AI agent development since July 1st, 2025. So this is 18 days, and there's been a fair amount, which is pretty cool. And then talking a little bit about a new architecture once the Agentic OS comes out and how the CRO, CTO, CEO will be aligned. So, all right,
Yeah.
Devin, let's do
Um,
it.
so first things first, Ross, just briefly tell us your story. I know your story because we used to work together, but I think it is important to get a little bit of background. And then we'll double down on that and then hop into the blogs.
Yeah. So initially, my journey started straight through college as a pre-med major. I met my wife in college when I was a junior and she was a freshman. So I think that's worth noting, just given what Rebecca is in my life. I went straight to medical school. So I went to Upstate Medical University, which is in Syracuse. Syracuse University is essentially their medical school. And then really got my dream residency in ear, nose, and throat, which is something I really, really want to get into. My dad's an ENT. I really, for many reasons, love the anatomy, loved a lot about it. You get to use cool gadgets. We use the Da Vinci robot, we use endoscopes and whatnot. So I trained at Mount Sinai in New York City, where I got to use some fun gadgets and got to learn a lot of really cool stuff with really very high volume hospital, it being in New York City and it being on the precipice of the Upper East Side, but really Spanish Harlem. So it actually is a hospital that serves a very diverse community, from the President of the United States, Joan Rivers, very famous people, to, I don't know, Joe Schmo down the street. So it was an interesting place to practice. But long and short, there was, just given the intensity of residency, wanted a little break from medicine, and I went to a company, Expert Institute, where I met Devin. And long and short, really ended up enjoying talking to clients. It's different than talking to patients. I like talking to patients too, but patients are sick. It's not as fun. What we get to talk about are fun stuff. And along the journey, came across AI just in general, really see the future of it. To me, it's very clear, as it is to many people. And I want to be part of it. Initially, I figured it would just be on exclusively the healthcare space. I still do some stuff in healthcare, but it has expanded my horizons into just about any vertical that AI can be used, which is just about any vertical, which is what we're figuring out. Throughout the journey, and I think it's worth noting, I really enjoyed writing. I have over a dozen peer-reviewed articles and presentations that I've given. I've headed up a randomized control trial, which is pretty cool to have done. It was a dumb trial, but we ended up doing it, and it was kind of interesting. I give presentations. My next one is going to be at the cancer support community in Washington, D.C. When we were at the Capitol, we met a lot of really cool people, and definitely something worth chatting about. But we were invited to the U.S. Capitol, and I hooked up and met this woman who was part of this cancer support, understood that I was a doctor, AI. And so they're testing out this really cool chatbot, and I've actually been able to play around with it and give some feedback. So that was a really long answer to who I am, but I think it hopefully describes sort of my background. It's definitely an academic, pretty like concrete. I'm just a concrete person. I don't generally do great at thinking outside the box, but these articles, these blog articles, give me that freedom to not be doing the peer reviewed, which is just very standard writing. It's very basic. You say exactly what you mean and what you say, and it's short and
Yeah.
sweet. This I get to kind of just write about whatever I want and think outside the box and think about some cool stuff. So
Yeah.
that's why I like writing and writing about AI.
I like it. What did you do at Expert Institute? Let's just brief, what was your role there?
Yeah, I started out reviewing medical records because I was straight out of residency. I didn't really have any skills other than being a leader, being a chief resident, whatever you want to say, leading a busy floor and busy surgical team. But um, I initially just thought I would be reviewing records, but as I spoke to more and more clients, and this is in the medical legal space, Expert Institute, where I was there for about 7 years at the end of the day, and just found that there was just a natural ease talking to clients. And actually, the medicine was cool. I felt like for me, it was like been there, done that. Like I don't really know what I was getting out of it. I feel like we were helping some people, but whatever. But really, I want to see what else within the company I could do. And it was a small company at the time, still is about like 200 employees, but it was like 37 when I started. And that just very lucky. I didn't know if this company was going to be successful. I didn't ask any of the right questions going in. I didn't know what the right questions were. I don't even know if today I know, but I certainly would have been a little bit more introspective. But we got really lucky. It's a very, very successful company led by a very, very great CEO, Michael Talby, who I call a friend of mine now. Actually, we're going to have hopefully dinner with him, Devin and I, in a month or so, just to catch back up. But he put a lot of trust in me. Wendy Kettner, who's a doctor, she put a ton of trust in me. Basically, just said, just do whatever you want to do. And it ended up that we aligned very closely. And what I wanted to do is what she wanted to do, and it was good for the company. So I ended up having my own book of sales and also supporting, and this is how we met, supporting the sales team when technical medical questions would come up. We would bring a doctor on, and those were really rewarding. There's obviously a bit of a knowledge gap just inherently. I went to school, I did residency, but we're talking to very sophisticated attorneys that were spending, I mean, truly millions of, hundreds of thousands, truly tens of thousands of dollars to work up a case that might not go anywhere. I'm not bringing out the small fiddle and whatnot. They can make a lot of money too, and but these attorneys care a lot about their cases. I was surprised to learn that. It was actually a huge learning experience for me. Being a doctor, attorneys and doctors don't really get along, especially med mal attorneys and doctors. Like there's a huge friction. But I came to appreciate their side of things, which was kind of a life lesson just about keeping an
Yeah.
open mind. Just because I'm indoctrinated into like one side of things very heavily, which is medicine, academic medicine, we inherently just are suspicious of a trial attorneys. That's how you're kind of taught medicine.
Yeah.
And then when you see the other side, it's kind of funny. They have their own fears about doctors. They have their own take about medicine and trying to make it better for people. So anyway, that kept me at the company, and as I got more senior, I was overseeing teams and supporting the squad, and I realized that I'm a good individual producer. That's cool, but I'm much better at. I like to think raising all ships, with me being the high tide, and finding like-minded people like Devin, Andrew Lewis, everyone else on the team who has a similar viewpoint about it. Then we all lift each other up. And I feel like that's just a more rewarding experience, being supportive of a larger team and being more of a manager.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Expert Institute, it's actually interesting. Like I learned how much doctors screw up
Yeah.
and that it's
Yeah.
not automatic. You go to a hospital and you get fixed, that they're human too. And that not all personal injury medical malpractice attorneys are ambulance chasers, right? Like they genuinely are trying to help their clients and there's like good motive behind it. And Expert Institute is actually an interesting thing because we were talking to MDs and lawyers all day long, every day. And those two professions are highly credentialed. You go to school, you get the stamp, and then you go out and it basically qualifies you for a certain level of income and quote unquote societal respect. And it's mainly based on Like, okay, I have this credential, which basically indicates that I have a certain specialized skill set or knowledge. Um, and it's interesting to think about professions like that in the era of AI, where intelligence becomes a commodity, and people start to think, why do we even need lawyers? Why do we need law firms or even doctors, right? Where do you see the line being drawn in those two professions, where what AI can do, and then maybe a specialized individual who has that credential takes over, and it can't be replaced?
It's a really interesting question, and this might just go towards the fact that I feel like doctors, and maybe this is for better good reason, lack a lot of control over sort of administrative stuff, because the typical
Mm.
doctor wants to see patients, and the typical attorney wants to try cases if that's what they do. This is what you go into. You sign up for these things. So doctors inherently, and attorneys, but doctors just want to practice for the most part, and see patients, see a lot of them. Hopefully they're doing it for the right reasons, but whatever it is, they want to operate, or they want to see patients. They don't want to deal with paperwork. What I'm trying to get at here is, like, attorneys really, I mean, they make the laws. It's not as easy as saying trial attorneys always get what they want. They generally side with the Dems and doctors with the Republicans, and so it depends who's in control, and that's where that state swings. It's somewhat of a simple, straightforward process with how the politicians align and where their money is coming from. Like the AMA supports the Republicans a lot of different
I mean,
doctor
Texas
groups.
Texas like doesn't allow, like, medical malpractice is almost not worth, because it's like
Yeah,
a 250, 100,000.
250K, maybe they just change it to 500. But anyway, for a med mal case, what we're referring to is they have a cap on damages. And so a lot of these cases, at least when you're in New York, where I don't, the caps are very different. I mean, doctors' fees, if you're in a hospital in an ICU for a week, that's like millions of dollars already, hundreds of thousands, literally. And these patients, that's what they're dealing with. So, their damages go up a lot. But yeah, so in Texas, they cap it. So, anyway, I think, I feel like just being kind of thrown in the towel as a doctor, like, I think it's just going to be kind of dictated to us. Like,
Mm.
and I just say that from a little bit of experience, where when they were creating EMRs, the electronic medical records, doctors kind of just went along with it. And the system works for everyone but doctors when we were writing these notes, to be honest. And it's okay. It's not what was me. Like, doctors also used to scribble. You can read their handwriting. I mean, there's also a mess that was happening without it. But anyway, when there's just like typical story, like doctors weren't at the table for it. So, like, hopefully for AI, doctors are. I think it's meaningful. But I think there are just some realities. Like, attorneys, I think a lot of their BS mundane work that they don't want to do anyway can be automated. They're gonna have to read the stuff and all that, but I mean, it already is at their fingertips that they don't. That, in theory, either one, they could get home on time and see their family. I think that's a great thing. Or two, they could take on more cases. They could focus more on an individual case of someone who got really hurt. I mean, these records are really thick and they're thousands of pages. I mean, missing something is not unheard of. So, maybe that allows them to do more of that, and to represent their clients better with AI. That would be the ideal thing. Obviously, attorneys, rightfully so, are concerned that AI will just, there are a set of rules and AI will just make decisions in the next decade. I
Yeah.
mean, that's probably fair. Humans use a lot of emotions when we make decisions. And really, at the end of the day, a medical legal case is a lot more about emotions and a sick patient and someone who didn't do well than it is really about the medical facts in often cases. So that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. But
It is.
I think with surgery, kind of to get back on track, that's the best I could speak to. I think the Da Vinci robot is going to be AI driven and do surgeries and do a better job in probably the next decade or so.
Yeah.
But I think there is a place for humans in the perioperative setting, so pre and post op. I think humans, I mean, I say this often, but like there are studies, humans heal better when other humans are compassionate towards them, or taking care of them. I don't know if robots, in like whatever sense we're gonna say it. I mean, they'll probably be pretty humanoid at some point, but I don't know if that's going to be the same touch. Is it going to have the same outcomes? So that would be
Well,
my hope.
I mean, there's also the question of, like, if Da Vinci is AI powered and doing these surgeries and something does go wrong, who is
Yeah.
at fault?
Yeah,
You
it's a huge issue, and it's something I think about often. I mean, the AMA, American Medical Association, and just about every other subgroup, like the American Academy of Otolaryngology, which I'm a member of, like whatever, they all say it's up to it's the doctor's responsibility, and that's totally fair.
yeah,
It's medicine is sometimes just a losing battle when if your pathologist gives you the wrong diagnosis and then you operate, you're all going down for it. And even though I'm not a pathologist, it just that sort of like there's a captain of the ship concept that I think is appropriate, and the buck stops here, even if it's not your fault. I don't. Patients want some closure, and you sort of have to if you become a surgeon or you become like the head of a team, like you sort of just have to fall on the sword sometimes, and it's better for patients too.
yeah. You know, I think a, a strong pattern that we're seeing is um, the administration of a job. That's this is a little TMI. I'm not going to tell you his name, but my cousin recently lost his job because he's doing HVAC and whatever, and a part of that job is they have to do data entry. They got to go see the meters and enter the data, and he has like dyslexia or some. He has some issues where that is kind of like a harder thing for him, and he did everything in the job outside of that well, but he couldn't do the data entry the way they wanted in the time they
Hmm.
wanted. And so he lost the job, right? Because he didn't meet that standard. I think AI gives us the opportunity to remove that requirement from every role. Salespeople have to enter data and they suck at it, and it's a huge issue, right? Doctors, lawyers, even like all of these professions where you have a certain skill set where you need to perform in a certain way. Uh, there's just so much energy and brain power and time spent on just the organization of your environment to even go and perform. And if you think about professional athletes versus high school athletes, like professional athletes have all of that stuff taken care of, where the only job they're doing is working out and trying to get better at their craft. But the high school kids got to go to school, and then they got to make sure they got their shoes together. They got to make sure they buy the right shoes, the right size, and all this stuff. And so it's that focus. And so AI might actually eliminate a lot of the administration, a lot of the organization of information, and allow us to focus primarily on our actual skill sets. What I want to do now is talk about what AI helping us increase our performance or improve our performance. So I have an old girlfriend of mine. Her dad was a doctor, and he was just a personal physician basically, and he was one of those doctors who just really cared about his job, worked really hard, cared about his patients. And so he spent a lot of hours at night, every night, researching cases, doing a bunch of research, trying to make sure he properly diagnosed issues. He found new medicines or new approaches to treatment, so he could better help his patients, right? I think AI could probably help there as well, right?
Yeah, I think you're 100% spot on there. I think that would be the most ideal use of AI, and it's also like what AI is best at. It just happens to be a marriage of like what AI can do even today, and marrying with what no one wants to do anyway. And frankly, if you want to do it, you're not doing a good job of it probably anyway. The data entry, we all have our concentration. I mean, you can only concentrate on stuff, and
I
that's
mean, dude,
interesting
uh,
story with your cousin.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
No.
you just made me think like how many people are averaged to like not even good salespeople, but they are, loved and they get promoted simply because they're really good at writing notes into the CRM, or simply because they're really good at organizing kind of the CRM itself, or they have their follow-ups ready to go and organized, right? But there's no real talent behind it or skill behind it. It's just they're good at organization. There's a lot of people who have made careers just being good at administrative tasks, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point. I mean, and it could go kind of like either way. Sometimes you see a salesperson who's naturally really good, but they're struggling because their manager is just on them because they're never entering anything. I have someone off the top of my head. I'm not just obviously use names, but like I just one guy. I just know if he just like logged shit and played the game a little bit, he would be through the stratosphere. He's very talented, but I think anyway. I think he's just happy with where he is. So AI could do that for him, and then he would get the credit that he deserves. And then on the the other end of the spectrum, like the people who I guess are good at gaming the system, well, AI is just going to do it and standardize it. So there's no more of that. It'll be very standard. And as a manager, that's really important. Like I think like when I go through ClickUp, which is our CRM, you would think like, oh, well, I could catch up really quickly. Well, if there are like 15 different accounts, I just have a short period. Everyone knows it. Like I have a short period of time to figure out what is what. So if it's standardized and I know where to look for things, I could get through and figure out what's going on. But if people are logging it in different ways, it ends up taking a lot more time. Which again, I'm not a micromanager. Frankly, there's no one to micromanage. It's sort of like the team is just us, which is great. But still, like there are some accounts I don't know as much about. So like if AI could just standardize that, it's just a win-win all around, I think.
Totally, totally. I think if we can just remove all of the distraction or stuff that's not around the actual performance or the skill set, then it's a huge positive, right?
Yeah, work about work is something, I mean, the term I think you even introduced to me, but it's just so perfect. We're always asking each other, or before, we started implementing better processes, we're asking, where's this, where's that? And it's always in the same place. So like, it's somewhere in the drive or something, but AI can really help
Yeah,
with that kind of stuff. And it's frustrating. Like I think you have one of the best perspectives on me. Like I usually am pretty good natured about things, but when it comes to certain things, it just like blows me up. And it's sometimes the easiest things like, and I think it's just that I just assume technology should be able to do this for me by now if we're, sending
yeah,
people to the moon and stuff. Like we can't figure that out. But
yeah.
that's
I
just
mean,
me.
you honestly are the prime example of someone who just like wants to just do the core of the job, and all of the other stuff just is like, I don't have patience for that,
Yeah, it's
which is
true.
the right mindset, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of people who overthink and get distracted and end up not doing the core of the job, and they do what we used to call in basketball fake hustle,
Right.
which is like diving on the floor and the ball's all obviously out of bounds, just to be like, oh, I hustled. Um, there's just so much of that, and there's so much politics and corporate culture that I think AI is going to kind of like eliminate and change, for the better.
I agree. I agree.
Like,
There'll be a pain period, just like anything. Like I guess Donald Trump said with the tariffs, there's going to be a pain period. But if we could get through it, and I'm hopeful for Donald Trump and our country, if we could get through this pain period, which is hard to convince people of it,
hmm,
like AI in the long run is going to be a really good thing for people, I think. But in the short term, if you lose your job, that's the end of one sucks. Like that, you lose your health insurance, your family, we know the stories. So I hope that doesn't happen in massive droves. I mean, that's just bad for society, but it might.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I forget exactly what you just said that made me think of this, but randomly, I think last night or 2 nights, the days are blending together. I was thinking about um, alignment, and I've been saying like, oh, the number one bottleneck for AI is the UI. I'm almost thinking now the number one bottleneck for AI is alignment. It's really just uh, trying to force the LLM to get you what you want at the end. Like that is like the number one problem we're just trying to solve across the board. It seems like, right? Like the model providers are trying to improve the LLM so that way we can get the outputs that we want. Like we are building application layer systems to get the output that we want from the LLM ultimately. So like the core thing is just aligning the LLM to get you the output that you want. Um, now that we have LLMs, assume that problem solved. Now we need to align ourselves. And your blog is kind of like about this specifically, from an executive standpoint, CROs, CEOs, CTOs, COOs, et cetera, what their roles become when, an agentic operating system, or when we actually reach this future that we all know to be inevitable, comes to fruition. What does alignment from a human perspective, a team perspective, look like in your opinion when we have these things like actually operating at scale?
Yeah, I think. Let me see if I could share my screen here. I'm not sure if anyone is it kind of somewhat big enough
Yeah,
to see.
yeah,
So yeah, basically, I just want to look through the diagrams here. So this is my first attempt. This was probably in January after reading an article. So this is definitely, I mean, a lot of what I write is not an original thought. It's taking and synthesizing things from smarter people than I, and resources that are out there that I don't have the numbers on. But uh, having a tech first CEO and CTO at the top, and then there'd be head of community, product manager. This head of community is something like I think we speak about a lot. Like we desperately want at Custom AI Studio. We're just small. It's hard to dedicate a whole role to it, but I mean, it would be so sweet to have it. And then full stack engineer and go to market engineer for the CTO. What didn't quite make sense to me with that is that the agentic OS, the operating system itself, hadn't really come to the fore when I did the initial diagram. But now I added in the agentic OS, which is kind of now taking over what traditionally were middle managers. And I write an article about, middle managers are going to have to adapt or something. Because I mean, I think the agentic operating system with kind of this type of hierarchy, which is no longer like a pyramid, really, it's a different shape, is going to be the most efficient here. Then I had one more thought of bringing the CRO in, and that's where the CRO would oversee the actual agent configuration and orchestration layer. So, everyone in the C-suite is going to have a technical background. It doesn't mean you're coding Python, but you need to understand at least the basics to then be able to configure or give recommendations for that. So if the CRO is going to be added in and part of the C-suite, I think it looks something like this and just expanding it to these agent layer here. And then there's the agentic OS and the same thing as before.
Is it
Um,
fair to kind of equate this graph here to what kind of exists today, where like if you're going to be a proper CRO, if you're going to be any of those executive positions, there's a bare minimum skill set you need. You need to know how to work on a computer, like
yeah,
bare minimum,
that's
right?
right.
Like,
That's right.
and so there is like some technical, you know, skills that are needed, right? Like you need to know how to kind of work with the CRM. Like you kind of need to know certain baseline things to even be a CRO or CEO or CTO, even today, right? And so like, a CRO, one didn't exist, but assuming it existed in the 50s, they didn't have to know any of that, right? They just kind of had to keep things, on a piece of paper.
Right.
And so just the baseline skill you need to have is evolving. And with AI, it'll evolve again to you're more writing specs and strategy, which you were at the beginning, but probably less of the human kind of orchestration of it all or the
Right.
human management of it all, right?
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
It'll be pretty interesting. I mean, who do you think, like from a CRO perspective, like what are the qualities that you think is going to make a really good, AI first CRO in the future?
Yeah. I think one, it's someone who does have an understanding. Again, it doesn't have to be coding, but understands the principles of AI very, very, very well. And so I think that's going to be key. Having the baseline of AI. Then I think the usual stuff from a CRO, which is being organized, being good with people, and I think being realistic. But this goes back to point one: being realistic with ourselves, what AI can and can't do, wherever at time, whatever time point we're in, if it's 2026, 27, 28, whatever. Like today, where are we? And I think that takes some honesty amongst us and the CROs and the products team, because we want our products to be the very best, and we want it to do everything right now because that's what our clients come to us for in theory. But everyone understands the limitations. But anyway, I think that puts us in a position where we want to push our product and push it forward, and that's how you stay at the bleeding edge of the cutting edge, like Custom AI Studio. But you also have to be honest about where that is actually today. Otherwise, I mean, it's just a bad look, but it's also really bad for business. You're going to lose a lot of clients when you're not delivering what you're promising. So I think it comes down to just that knowledge base, but then the people skills will always be there in speaking with the C-suite or I mean, I always have this thought experiment where like, okay, the sales team, there's a buying agent, there's a selling agent. The selling agent and the buying agent are talking, blah, blah, blah. They reach a standstill because whatever, they determine that the product is right, but I don't the seller, the buying guy, the agent is just not sure if it's the right move. So you bring in humans at that point for the more difficult fringe cases, and then the CRO would be there. I mean, you don't need a huge sales team at that point. Really, it's just one person you would need could handle the very rare call that you would need because it, in theory, should be selling itself. But for those kind of standstills, I still think people skills will be very important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even today, like, um, think of the scenario of your suburban housewife who is like um, doing a bunch of research on some kind of like health supplements. It's like they are basically selling themselves by getting the information that they need. The information exists somewhere. They are actively searching for it, reading it, informing themselves, and then trying to come to their own decision on whether or not they want to buy. And then maybe there's like the last mile, which is kind of a trust factor. They've whittled it down to like, I know what supplement I want. I'm determining, there's certain brands that I'm interested in, but there's something missing, right? Like, how do I know to pull the trigger? Well, this sales guy over here made me feel like he was going to take care of me, and the sales girl over here, it felt like I was just another number, right? Um, and so that trust factor, that connection, I think is uh, super super important, and probably the thing at the end that's going to matter more than like, do you know everything about the product? Ideally, you do, right? But more than just like sharing information. Although we'll see. I mean, I had a thought experiment similar, which is like, I did a short stint at a startup, and we did a lot of like demos. We demo, like, that was the whole sales, right? The first 15, 20 minutes was sharing screen and demoing the software. And it was the same freaking demo every time. And I always was, and I started to think when I was looking at Hagen and whatnot, there could be kind of like, something to bridge the gap between like, okay, we're just running through tons of demos, the same demo, answering very similar questions. Maybe the actual customer or potential user could just talk with a Hagen agent as it is kind of controlling the demo environment, right? And so it can ask the questions about the software itself and whatnot. And then when it's time, get on a call with the salesperson, and the salesperson talks about some other details, right? Like roadmap things, or you know, uh, other details that kind of like matter, that are not just like, how does the product work, right? Or
Right.
is it gonna work
Right.
for me? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like AI can do that in its sleep, but the strategy and the more human side of like creativity, how are we going to approach the market? I think humans are for the foreseeable future going to be better at that. So I could see a world where you, me, Andrew, whatever, the three of us in the C-suite, we come in and Jarvis starts telling us everything from the weekend and gets us up to speed. And this is all your meetings, and we just sit there and we have a cup of coffee and we sit there. Maybe we say hi, how did your weekend go? But the AI brings us up to speed. And if there's anything that and then at the end, we get a line like, hey, okay, this is the strategy of the week for me. This is the strategy here. Great. Okay, let's move on. Um, I
Yeah.
could see that being a very realistic future and not that
So
far off.
not that far off at all. I mean, let's talk about you're now a CRO, right? Um, and right now you have we had Siba. She's on leave now. She just had a baby, which is amazing. Um, so she was on your team, but you don't really have a team yet, right? Which is coming soon, and you're going to start scaling your team. How do you imagine that working um, in this new era, right? Imagine, because we're in a limbo period, right? We're in a transition phase of like full, like, this is the new way to build teams with agentic, uh, as opposed to we build team like traditionally it's just like scale by headcount, like let's just like get more whatever. Um, how are you thinking about scaling the team and the skill sets that you need and the size of the team and the functions? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I think you set it up perfectly. Like it's the days of throwing numbers, meaning people, at an issue or a bottleneck or a problem, are way gone. I
Yeah.
mean, it was kind of crazy, but for SaaS companies, usually sometimes it was just how many calls can a company make in a day is just going to equate to how much business they get. So, but that's not the case, especially not with our business. We don't do cold calling. It's word of mouth, warm intros, that kind of stuff for now. Anyway, to get back to your question though, it's going to be a lean process. Like I think instead of hiring five people and thinking two will survive, or whatever the calculus used to be of how people used to hire at bigger companies, I think it would be like, this is going to be a rigorous interview process. AI is going to help find the right candidates because it's going to be a culture fit. It's going to be someone who's going to want to be a go-getter. But anyway, you're just going to find that one person, and me and that person are going to reach our limits. And then if we have to add another person, I would be surprised, but then we would do that. So I think it's an easy response, which is it's going to be a very lean machine. Um, and AI will just allow us to, have a good sense of when we're reaching our capacity, just whoever's on the team at that point.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually interesting because what has traditionally happened, which is now happening with agents, which is quite funny, is we've almost broken down the roles in an organization to just the most modular components possible. And we've tried to say, like, okay, if you're a salesperson, like, we don't want you worried about contracts. We don't want you worried about strategy. We don't want you worried about even generating the script. Like, we will give you everything you need to just do like this task, this workflow of do the sales. And specifically because we wanted to max out the energy and performance and focus on a specific action. And and then the bloat happens, and there's like a huge admin layer and all this stuff just to support that idea. With agents now, we have to break it out into we have to make it modular, right? Break out the prompts, like what is the expected output here? How much information is it kind of parsing through to make some kind of determination? Like, we don't want to go crazy with it. We want it to focus so that way it can do a good job, right? Now that agents are kind of doing that, and we can more quickly, easily do it with agents and constrain it, and even scale those, in your mind, when you're thinking about that person, are they a generalist, or do you imagine kind of giving them a step-by-step? I mean, I'm almost doing a leading question here, but this is something that I've been thinking about recently. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I have. Look, there are limits to what any one person can do, but I think as the generalist goes, that's me. Like, I fit the generalist role, and then I fill the team one, two people who are very specialized, and these people are going to be very personable people. These are,
Mm.
their outreach is going to be very customized. The AI just spitting out garbage to clients, no one responds. We're immune to that at this point. We have all figured out what that sounds like, what it looks like, and we don't listen to it. And I understand that. So the approach needs to be very personalized. So I think that person is going to be just a master at, having a lot on their plate, but mastering the ability for one person to maximize their personal outreach and keeping personal touches at scale. And AI is going to help with that, but you're going to need someone at the core who's going to be working with that AI to help them out, or it'll become generic again, and no one's, back to the original point. What were
Yeah.
you thinking though? What were your thoughts there?
Um, no, I think I had a different thought, but you kind of convinced me. And now I wonder where the gains of adding another brain start to depreciate, right? To a point where it really plateaus, and it doesn't, like, adding another person doesn't add that much kind of like brain power. Because imagine that you duplicated yourself twice, right? So you have three Rosses, and it's like, if three Rosses were collaborating on strategy up front, would the strategy be better, right? Like, would we somehow get better specs to input into like the system and like task all the niche people? And then how many Rosses do we kind of duplicate to where it's like no longer a value add? And so, like, I wonder, the like C-suite kind of strategy level, does that become kind of where the scale lever is, as opposed to, like, okay, we have strategy, now we need to hire 100 SDRs and, like, 200 AEs, and like scale kind of the people who are operating, right? Is the scale lever from a labor perspective actually on the strategy side now, as opposed to the individual contributor side? And I guess it's gonna end up depending on what the job function is ultimately. But it seems like with white collar work, especially entry level, middle manager,
Mhm.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there. I think the middle manager, no one liked anyway. And we've all been middle managers, most of us at some point, and it's kind of like a shitty feeling anyway, like when you are the middle manager, because like you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So it's not the end of the world that it doesn't exist. I think it's a demeaning position for everyone, and it's becoming obsolete, the middle manager. And everyone likes making fun of the middle manager, even though we all know at some point we were one, or we are one currently. It just is what it is. But yeah, I agree with everything you said there, though.
Yeah.
It'll be cloning the real winners AI, and then what the losers, whatever you want to call them, will be able to be brought up to a higher level. That's the goal of
Yeah,
anything, any solution.
it's quite funny. Like the whenever you talk to somebody who's like really skilled, really good, and you want them on team, they always are like I really like want to sit on strategy. Like it's always like I want to sit on strategy and kind of
Yeah.
manage it, and no one wants to do anything.
Right. Right. I think people identify, and I disagree though with it. But like in theory, it feels like if you're doing strategy, you get to sit there with your thoughts and your coffee and you take your time. But there's so much strategy and so much to come up with. It doesn't work like that. You're just doing a different job. Like, do you really like strategy? That's a different story than like, well, I think this is, and I agree with you. Like, this is the easiest way out. It's like, well, is it that bad talking to clients all day? And that's your job, and you're selling stuff and selling something that you love versus just sometimes strategy is pretty isolated. You're kind of like in your own black box of thoughts and trying to figure something out. And yeah, with AI though, it's easier to bounce ideas off of, and all of a sudden my ideas become that just brilliant. They're such great ideas. Good. It's like having a confidant that you don't piss off because you're calling them constantly. So
Yeah,
anyway, that was a little off tangent, but yeah, I think the theory of strategy people think will be a lot easier, but the reality is it's total. I mean, again, depends what you're doing, but like real strategy, like a COO, obviously that's a full-time job and very busy job.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's interesting. One of the things that I'm super always, as you know, just like very much focused on is like who we bring in and the culture that we build.
Yeah.
And AI just is not, AI is not going to build culture, in and of itself.
No, and if it does, you're doing something really wrong. If like your party planner being AI is that's fine, but like if AI is bringing the party, you guys got to
Yeah.
liven up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the most boring party ever. Um, yeah, man, I'm going to open it up for questions now if anybody has questions. But I'll just keep chiming in until somebody kind of raises their hand or just tells me to shut up.
You didn't ask me any of the quirky ones. I was excited to talk about.
I
Uh,
know.
well, I'm going to talk about this one really quickly.
I think Amar has a question real quick.
Oh, let's do that.
Oh,
Amar, what's up?
let's. What? Hey guys, nice to see you again. Great discussion. I was interested. I mean, the strategy is nothing without execution at the end of the day, and I think the other thing is that don't forget the cash flow. Getting to 200
100%.
SERs amazing, but not possible. But that's step by step. I didn't really have a question. I think it was interesting to see the graphs and diagrams. Ross, I haven't read your blog post in detail, but my gut tells me that it's gonna need evolving because I think if you're placing the agentic OS at the center of everything, it's almost like everyone else is actually on the periphery rather than being top down. I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
And and then I think in a sense it democratizes access to automation in the organization. So someone within sales who is technical, and I think that's the interesting point you're making in that it's not. I don't think it's just the C-suite that needs to have an understanding of these capabilities of these platforms. I think it's going to be everyone who is inputting into revenue generation or cost management in the company. They need to understand the capabilities so that they can make the right call in terms of should I automate this process or should I have an agent do this for me, or should I do I build it first in an agent or do I bring a person in to help me ideate and sort of build that out. So, and I think the thing is that it's not. I think you're going to end up, or clients would end up going flip-flopping or sort of oscillating between one extreme and maybe another. So in the traditional world, everyone hires people, right? We bring on new heads, but now it's like everyone's switched to let's automate that. And so the pendulum's swung that way. And I think again we're gonna end up sort of finding that fine balance. between the two, and people need to learn when to apply it, and, when to discard it, etc. So yeah, so just some thoughts there. I was interesting to me. So
Those are great points. It made me think of this video, and I think I watched it like 4 years ago. That's why I'm not remembering, but it stuck with me for a while about selling something technical. Your first line of, this was back also before anyone was talking about automation. So like SDRs existed, manager, like what the current flow is what this person was talking about. Like your SDRs, if they, or anyone who's speaking with a client, strikes out because they don't know even the basics about how things work. Like if someone says an LLM and the person's like, what's an LLM? I haven't heard that before. You're going to throw them out of the room, and that was really his point, is like, you want a second meeting, your people who get you those meetings need to be knowledgeable about the company. And that's on you as a manager to sit them aside and give them the proper training. And I mean, it's so often people don't have an understanding of what they're selling, probably because the upper levels are just not explaining it properly, or the upper levels don't know what they're selling or who they're targeting. I mean, that's probably also the reality, is people are kind of fudging it, and I get it. But if you can't talk the talk, walk the walk, whatever, I mean, you're not going to get a second meeting. So I think that's a really great point there.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about whether AI or agents or automation is a tool or an actor, and the way, whether it's one or the other, kind of defines how you build the organization, or what you expect employees to be able to do, right? Like if an employee is responsible for various workflows or a function within the business, and then to help them, you 10x their productivity by giving them AI tools, like that all makes sense, right? Like that's kind of what we have now. But then if we take it a step further and we say, well, the AI is actually responsible for various workflows or functions within the business, and you give that tools, then it's like a different calculus. Then it's like, well, where, it's no longer it's no longer a tool, right? That's why I call it an operating system, because it's a different thing entirely. And it'll be interesting to see if it'll probably likely, I mean, we'll see, be a combo of the two. It'll be a combo of the two for sure, actually.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right there. And it's funny when you bring up tool. Maybe it's just the way I'm prompting, but when I'm writing, I'm throwing things off of ChatGPT all of the time, and it's very helpful. I don't want it to write things for me, because then it's. But anyway, getting to the point of what I'm saying, ChatGPT likes to make it very clear that AI and AI agents, they're not just a tool anymore. They're more. That's just something that, so like, it seems to get upset when you call it a tool. So maybe be careful with ChatGPT. It always seems to be like, it's not just a tool anymore. And like, okay, I guess that's a trigger word for ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, you're such a tool.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't want to be called a tool. In fairness.
Yeah.
On that point, it's funny that there are almost as many note takers, AI note takers on this call than people.
That's right. That's 100% true. I think they beat us. AI is beating us. People are getting smart. They're sending their meeting agents to record things and try to duplicate themselves. It's cool. I like it.
It's not bad. I mean, but it does, like, it does change, like, what's funny is, like, imagine instead of all these note takers, it was people, right? Would that change the way that we're having this conversation? Would Amar be able to get his question in?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that change the actual data that we are currently creating ultimately? And then what are the downstream effects of that? Like when they do read this recording, maybe if they were on the call, the data that they have access to is like better or more fleshed out or more enriched or more focused on what they wanted to see. But because they're not on the call, it's not. And it's almost like a Schrodinger's cat situation, where it's like, or it's more of like the split, right? Like it's not until you measure it do you see where it ended up landing, right? It exists in multiple different states until you measure it. And it's like a very similar thing, where it's like, okay, it just fundamentally could be a different output, or the data that we create could fundamentally be different because agents are on the line and nobody's judging us because it's an agent, you know what I mean? Or whatever, or the agent's not like chiming in and asking a question just out of personal curiosity based on experiences that it has had. and then that somehow like drives the path of the conversation. So yeah,
it's interesting, Devin, because it comes back to the point around alignment. So if these agents came to the call being aligned with, you know, their masters or users intent, then would they be ready to answer questions during the discussion? You know, are we there? You know, are we going to get there? I'm curious. That's interesting
yeah.
thought process.
And then
That could close out the Schrodinger sort of question a little bit as well, right?
totally. And then it also might change how like we interact with agents. Like maybe we actually start to respect them a bit more because we know that there's a person at the end of the line almost who actually genuinely will see it, right? Because I doubt anybody's note taker that they don't even realize is on this call. Like they're not looking at the notes. They're not going to rewatch for the most. Like, they may be, but I assume not because I don't usually. Because it's more about like, okay, what question do I want to ask? Like, what information do I want to get out of this? And a lot of times it's a live situation. Like I sent Ross a couple of topics that we were going to cover today. I think we covered one, like, or
Yeah.
if any, yeah, because we're just kind of taking it live. Yeah, I mean, interesting.
Mm.
It's fun to just chat. I hope other people get something out of it. But Devin and I could chat about this stuff over and over. I mean, now we're talking about Schrodinger's cat. Goodness, how do we get there? That was a good one though.
Yeah, we always get to some weird like theory at some point.
Yeah, at some point, quantum mechanics seems to rear its ugly head one way or another.
If you could have any AI tool to help with your job or whatever, what would that be? What would it do? And you can go crazy.
Gosh darn it. It's like so simple. It's sad. I mean, having one of our executive agents, I've not put the time into getting it to where I want, but like something that literally tells me your wife told you 3 times this Friday you have this, like this is already happening right now as we speak. Like that would be cool. And again, that would like require wearables and stuff probably that I'm just not ready to do. But yeah, I mean, if it was like the whole my entire, I mean, I have the Hey Google thing. So like I'm always being listened to anyway. If those things were being productive with what I was saying and not using it against me to advertise stuff, that would be really cool. But there are so many, like, I mean, you gave it such an open-ended thing. That would also be concerning on other levels too, because we know they're nefarious actors and where's this data going? I don't know what people are going to do with my conversation with my wife over dinner, which is about nothing, but I don't know. It's just weird to have a big brother type feel. So maybe you got to be careful with that. But in theory, that would be really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone's dream is just the ultimate Jarvis, the ultimate personal agent.
That'd be so cool to have a Jarvis that functions at that level. And he's funny, Jarvis he has a sense of humor.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it's like I've been thinking about how that would even be possible. The amount of data that would need to be collected is insane to make it like truly seamless like that. I don't know. Like we would need like a 360 cameras, like plus additional sensors like on us at all times, plus like environmental cameras that can capture kind of the scope of like the setting you're in.
You should talk to Chong Han. He was part of a company, and I don't think it worked out where so leaving foreign bodies behind in surgery is actually a real thing. I'm fortunate I never did it, but like I had a neurosurgeon who I was operating on left a sponge in someone's cranium and they had to open up the next day. I mean, this stuff really does happen somehow. It shouldn't. But they were going to use like extended AR, XR in an operating room, similar to what you're saying, and it could detect all of everything, a scalpel to a sponge, and its location at all times, so that you wouldn't leave foreign bodies in patients. It's a pretty good idea. The way we do it now is pretty archaic. If it's done correctly, though, it should never fail, but it happens. So, well, for whatever reason, I have to ask Chong Han. I don't think it ended up really lifting off, but that kind of stuff is people are thinking about just at different scales or about different things. Having that in the home could be kind of cool.
That was one of the most common medical malpractice situations we saw was foreign bodies left after
That's a
surgery.
slam dunk at that point. Like there's
Yeah.
no way you could explain that that being
Yeah.
okay. That's the wrong side surgery type of. It gets, I mean, not to get into the weeds, it gets tricky though. Some people put things in weird places. I don't want to go into it. And then it's the question, did the patient do it? Did the doctor? But usually it's that a foreign body was left behind by a doctor, nurse, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody have any questions here last 4 minutes? You burning questions for Ross Green, MD? Anybody have any ear, nose, throat issues they're dealing with?
Yeah. We got any ENT issues out there?
Free medical advice.
Yeah, exactly. And we got a question here. Did you notice how fast the meta virtual reality fad died down? I was. So that's such a cool point. And I thought for sure the meta VR, AR, whatever, that was going to be the real deal. We were going to be in virtual conference rooms for the rest of our lives. And it came out around COVID. And I was like, I don't think we're ever seeing each other again anyway. I was very pessimistic. I thought we were done for as a society. And then yeah, I think COVID pushed the pendulum so quickly the other way. We were so sad not to see each other. We actually want to see each other all of a sudden. We made a point of being in person. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe the technology isn't good enough. I thought we were going to go to virtual concerts in arenas. Like that sounded cool. You could go to Kendrick Lamar and just sit on your couch. Like, I mean, I still think that that's going to happen, but it's a good point. I'm surprised it hasn't taken off. This isn't the first derivation of this type of technology that just hasn't quite lifted off to the next level, like one would think. What do you think? I mean, what do you have thoughts on that? It's kind of weird that it hasn't taken off.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a longer time horizon for that because, like fundamentally, I've said this before. I think any innovation or invention is just built off of a natural human thing anyway. AI was quick because it helps us with communication and information sharing. But this is on your face, and people don't like shit on their face. Like they just don't. And if they have to wear glasses, they make sure they look good on their face, or they get contact lenses.
That's
You know, like people care about how they look to other people. It's a huge deal, and they like reading other people's facial expressions.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah. Like if you're wearing a giant contraption on your face, you're just not going to feel cool about it. Like even at home necessarily, you know.
It's true.
Yeah, it's going to have to be
context. JP's got the right idea there.
Yeah. Look, he looks goofy as hell. Like, what are we doing?
Oh, come on. I actually think that would look pretty cool if you had a little visor there. Well, anyway, we got a minute left, and Devin, I know you got your VIP session going on next. So anyone in the VIP, you got Devin. You got a one-on-one. Thank you, everyone, for stopping in and listening. I had fun. I hope everyone got something out of it. Next week, we actually have a really good friend of mine, Kathleen Leger. She's a triple board certified doctor, starting her own practice and really interested in AI and wants some airtime more than anything. So I'm excited to speak with her. She's a really cool, smart gal. So excited to introduce you to her.
Awesome.
In the meantime, thanks, Devin. I had a good time. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next week.
Stay tuned. Thank you.